Welcome everyone to the Platform Podcast. I'm really excited about today's episode. I've got a very good friend of mine, Sean Millar, joining us. Now, as you know, we interview a lot of coaches, a lot of athletes, but today we've actually got Sean, who is the father of Jared Millar. Now, Jared Millar was a golf athlete we put into college. A few years ago, he went and played Division II college golf, but Jared didn't stay in the States for 4 years. He had a change of pathway and returned back to New Zealand to continue his studies. So I thought I'd bring Sean on today's show to talk a little about his process going to America from a parent's perspective, and also, around Jared coming home. And Sean's also going to share some advice for prospective student athletes that are watching this, and also parents as well. So Sean, thank you so much for joining us. We first connected in 2018 at the Remuera Golf Club. Marcus Wheelhouse, great golf coach, invited me to talk, and I remember that's when I met Jared and yourself for the first time. When did you start thinking about college golf for your young boy?
I think it really came to thought once we'd returned from America in 2016, where he was fortunate enough to play in the US Kids World Tournament over there,
Yep.
as well as the World Junior Stars of Golf. And post returning to New Zealand, he really saw that as the opportunity and a pathway for young aspiring golfers.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I mean, when you guys went to the States, whereabouts in America did you go to, and what were the golf courses like over there?
Well, the first event was hosted in Las Vegas at
Nice.
Bears Best. So that was one of Jack Nicklaus's layouts, where he's taken essentially 18 of his favorite holes around the world and condensed that into one course, and that was just an absolute phenomenal
Did you get a chance to play at all?
I did, but as a father and as a caddy, you kind of, no matter how bad I was hitting it on the day, you let your player play from those positions, because you never know in the event if they may find themselves in a similar position.
I'm surprised that Stanford didn't offer you a deal, mate. And were the greens absolute glass? Were they very quick?
No, actually they weren't. I think at that course, the biggest tip that we got in the week, and that's really when you get out there, you speak to some of the green staff, and that, they're mowing fairways, they're mowing greens all day, every day kind of thing, keeping it in pristine condition. And I remember on one particular hole, this greenkeeper came past, and, we had a look and a read at a putt a few different times, and we were still getting it wrong at the time. And he said, "Guys, I'm going to tell you this once, and it's going to last forever, and it's wherever the Las Vegas tower is, the greens will always slope towards the tower."
Oh, really?
So,
see, this is very much like New Plymouth. There's a golf club there called Inglewood Golf Club, and I always go with my father and my uncle, and we play on it on the weekends when I'm back home. And there's the greens. The greensmen always say the greens slope away from the mountain.
Yeah.
And I listen to the advice, and I still miss every putt. Might need a lesson from you, man. So what was it like? I mean, you're leaving New Zealand. Now, there wasn't COVID around then, so obviously traveling was a lot easier for you guys. You arrived there. You're in Las Vegas. What was it like? Were there many college coaches watching Jared compete over there?
I think at that stage we weren't really sure of where and how the college coaches would go about their business. Jared was only probably 12 or 13 at that time, so I can't honestly say that I noticed anyone in particularly there. However, when they do go and compete in the US Teens event out in North Carolina at Pinehurst, there's a lot more activity around those sort of events, with coaches coming out and scouting for young prospects at that stage.
I mean, look, my father's a tennis coach, and my brother plays, and I played a lot as a young man, and I've witnessed how hard parents have to work to take their kids to tournaments, and it's not easy. I've been memories of myself and my brother driving in the car 4.5 hours to play in an event, and then would return home the same day off that tournament. I'm guessing you've done the exact same thing.
Absolutely.
How was it as a parent taking your boy to tournaments, and what was that like?
Well, I mean, I wish I knew Uber was around that time, because I could have been a Uber driver full time for golfers. No, I mean, you do make those sacrifices, and you do cart them around the country. I remember going down to Manawatu,
Yeah.
where he played in an event, and it's literally you leave here 6 o'clock the morning on Saturday morning, or just before. You get down there 12 o'clock, you have your practice round, you get something to eat, get to bed, 36 holes the next day, and then straight after that you drive back, home to Auckland and get home at Monday morning, 2 o'clock.
That's crazy. And I feel like at the time when I was a young man, I didn't really understand the effort that went into it until I got my driver's license and had to start driving myself around places. And I was like, man, I had it good. And I know you looked after your boy very well, very well. I mean, but how was it like the parent, athlete, child relationship? You obviously want your son to succeed really well at these tournaments when he's in high school, right? And you're driving hours to go to an event. When it doesn't go their way, how did you deal with it?
I think for us it was very different in the sense that I probably always wanted to dissect straight after the round. In hindsight now, having listened to some other podcasts from coaches / sports psychologists around the world, like Dr. Brett McCabe, he has some fantastic, podcasts out there and advice to parents, how to navigate through those conversations. Quite often your athlete's just going to want to shut down. He's not going to really be open to a conversation straight afterwards. And it's just recognizing that and giving them the space to basically come to you
totally right.
afterwards. So, and invariably they will come to you, when they're ready for that conversation. And it's just being patient and just understanding that it has to come really from their side, those conversations. And some of the questions that you'd give them is vastly different now, having listened to some of this content, than the questions I would have asked back then. So it's always a learning experience for both athlete and parent.
I mean, obviously the question that we get asked quite often from a parent's perspective is, what should a parent shouldn't do during an event? Because obviously, like you said, there's a lot of parents. I mean, I can speak from my own personal experience. My dad wants to go through what happened if the tennis match that my brother played didn't go too well. When it comes to like after a round, what advice could you give a parent? Like, how do you recognize these things? Is it case by case? Is it just something is it like a fundamental thing that you always live by? Like, after a tournament, I'm not going to talk about the round for like 24 hours or something. Like, what advice could you give parents?
I think every athlete's different. I mean, some of Jared's friends, they'd be open to those conversations quite quickly in their round. They'll either go to the range afterwards and they'll go and work on something. Other athletes are just basically mentally tired at that stage and just need that downtime, and they take normally longer to reflect on things. And they'll know what let them down, or what things they can work on going forward. And as a parent, it's then really just up to you to try and facilitate those areas that they need to go and work on afterwards.
And I guess also, like, there's a bit of a fine line with the way parents can do things for their child, because obviously the end result is that a parent wants the best out of their child, right? They want the best for them, and there's a fine line between forcing them to go and practice and letting the athlete drive that process themselves. Where do you sit on that?
I think for a long time I was one of those parents that also kind of when are you going to practice, what are you working on, and things like that. I guess now I can see how that would have also influenced some, not necessarily behaviors, but the athlete really has to, first and foremost, they have to be in love with what they're doing, and they've got to understand why they're doing it and what the outcome is that they want from this.
That's good advice, yeah.
So it comes down to that at the end.
Yeah, a lot of people, they go out and practice, but they don't know what they're practicing for. Do you find that sometimes?
Absolutely. And I think one of the burning questions that I always had was, when you're working on things, you got to understand what it is that you're working on and what the outcome is that you want to get and where in that process you are. That's probably the biggest advice that I can give, not only the athletes but to parents as well, is just helping your athlete, your child, understand where they are in the process, because they're playing in essentially an outcome-based sport, right?
Totally.
Now that outcome for each athlete is very different.
Yeah.
And they're not all at the same level, but it's helping them understand where they are in their process.
Did you find Jared used to compare himself to other athletes playing? It might have been better than him or scoring better than him, and he was quite hard on himself about that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, having a look now after the weekend's NZPGA, I mean, there's a guy, Louis Doblar from Australia. He played in the final round with Jared Millar, and they were literally going head to head in that final round, stroke for stroke, and coming down the 17th or the 18th, they were on the same score on the card, having played the whole day, and it was that last 2 holes that meant the difference between Louis finishing 3 strokes ahead of Jared. And again, it's probably just Louis having been in that same position or a similar position, being one of the leading amateurs in the world at that stage, again and again. And, it's just proven itself this weekend where he walks out and he wins on the big stage. So,
because I find a lot of athletes, like, for example, we recently announced that Zach Svanwick has verbally committed to University of Florida. Really excited about that for 2024, and to Zach's credit, man, that kid has worked so hard for that. I don't think people know actually how hard that guy's worked. I mean, he shot an amazing round in Manawatu recently, and Zach was borrowing clubs from the clubhouse because his clubs were at his house in Napier, which they couldn't go near due to the flooding. And also he was playing that round. He shot 2 rounds under 70, and he shot that with the coach watching him the whole time. Yeah. Like a lot of athletes would fold under that pressure, knowing that a college coach was flying across the world to come watch you play, and you've got an opportunity. Like, that's pretty amazing, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's really the difference between athletes, like in America, for instance. They used to that constant scrutiny and people around watching. I mean, I remember the first tee that Jared stood up at in Vegas, and all of a sudden there's 100 odd people standing around the tee box, and you're being announced on the tee, and there's people clapping, and they can pronounce the surnames right or wrong on the day, but you just got to basically extract yourself from that and try and focus on what it is that that you can do and that you've been doing for so many hours. But yes, again, it's just a different pressure that that you got to get used to, and the more you put yourself under that pressure, the more you're going to get used to it. I mean, Tiger talks about the days that he used to go out with his father, and they'd play in a 4-ball, and his dad would be there screaming and clapping and shouting, and
didn't he used to have a whistle or something, or like
doing whatever he could to literally distract him. And I mean, we all know how mentally strong he is.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy what you see in America. You see it in all sports. You get heckled on the sideline. You get yelled obscenities. I was actually in I was in Christchurch recently because my brother was playing Davis Cup for New Zealand. He was very lucky enough to get selected, and they're playing against Bulgaria. And when I was down there, there's a coach called Remy Fion, and he is a former college athlete, went to Ole Miss. He's got a big ring. He did very well as a college athlete. And I said, mate, what was your biggest memory in college tennis? And he said, I was playing against, I think it was University of Georgia he was playing against. And there would have been close to 7,000 or something odd people just around the courts, like cheering on the University of Georgia. He said it was the most intimidating thing because every time he lost a point, they would be saying, yes, come on. Like, they'll be yelling out, you suck, and like all this sort of stuff. And he said that that's why you see a lot of athletes going to college now and then going on the pro tour regardless of what sport they're playing, because you're gaining so much more. It's not just the academics, but you're gaining a lot mentally as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a massive mental game, golf.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. And I think when you're out there, the challenges that they face going over to the States, I mean, they don't really, back in New Zealand, unless they're playing secondary school golf, where really most schools teams are picked for the week, or they only have, they can only select from a few players, and those players compete week in and week out. When you get into the college system, you might have 14 guys on the roster, and literally every week it's a shootout to see who gets into those top 5 or 6 places that potentially travel and play that week.
Absolutely. And the reason I mentioned Zach Swamwick before, and for people listening to this podcast today, Sean and I, when we catch up for coffees, we talk for hours. We just keep going on tangents all the time. So we'll try to keep this streamlined as possible. But the reason why I mentioned Zach is we're now getting a few athletes comparing themselves to Zach, saying, oh my gosh, I can't get what Zach's got. I can't go to the US. I can't make it as a pro. And I'm like, well, no, everyone's different. Everyone's different, right?
Absolutely. So whether you're going there and playing a D2, D3, D1, you really have to understand where you fit and where you are in that process again.
Yep.
And when you get there, I mean, you're going to have different motivating factors. So for a lot of them, their motivating factor initially is, I need to get onto the team, I need to post some results, and we're just locking in my spot for the season, and that could be their goal.
Yep, 100% agree. So let's get into the college process for yourself. So we signed up with you guys, we signed an agreement together. I think it was November 2019 is when we first made that WhatsApp group. And I mean, for you guys, obviously you went to the US when Jared was 15, 16 years old. He played in front of some people over there, and he came back, talked to a few of his peers and said, yes, I want to go to the States. Now, the college process for you, what was really important for you? What did you want us to do for Jared in terms of finding him a deal?
I think the most important for us was really securing him a good location. Second to that, something that would benefit him golf-wise. We were looking for a coach that was really hands-on at that stage, to guide him through his development as a player. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, they can stay in contact with their coaches back home. Nowadays there's a lot of apps on phones and
FaceTime and stuff. And
there's a lot of ways to stay in touch with coaches back home. But yeah, you got to find something that really suits you and suits what you want to get out of your golf.
I mean, Jared his degree was very niche that he wanted to do. I know he spoke about this product design for how many hours, but he ended up going to the States and he did quite well. I actually think when I spoke with Jared last time, when I was down in Christchurch, I caught up with him and he said he started an NFT with his friend, on the blockchain. And we're getting into that sort of space, which sounded pretty exciting. But in terms of you didn't get a chance to go to Indianapolis. Traveling was a bit difficult, wasn't it, during COVID times? And what was it like, though, at Indianapolis? What was the feedback you got from Jared?
I think he enjoyed the university. He enjoyed the people around him. He probably didn't slot into the exact degree that he initially wanted to study, like in the product design and that, mm-hmm. based on, limited universities over there that offer that. Mm-hmm. So I think initially there was a little bit of uneasiness with the path that he chose. And that was, at that stage, it was electronic engineering.
Yeah.
After semester 1, he changed over to mechanical engineering, and he found that very rewarding, very challenging, and something that he really enjoyed. But again, in hindsight, through semester 1 and semester 2, the grades that he attained, he managed to get onto the dean's list for both semesters. And coming back to New Zealand, I think the one thing that he takes out of that whole experience is he's now found really what it is, that kind of motivates him and what he'd like to do going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, after talking with you guys throughout the college recruitment process, we finally got towards the end where we had to make a decision on which way to go.
Yeah.
And Jared, yourself and Jared had a chance to talk to a number of colleges. Why University of Indianapolis?
I think for us, it seemed like a very close-knit family.
The coach set up, etc.
The coach set up, I mean, he had been the coach there for quite a number of years. He had a long-standing family history with the university.
Yeah.
Their basketball stadium, for argument's sake, is called Nickerson Stadium, because his father was the athletic director a few years prior to that, and his grandfather was over there as well. So there's this long history of the Nickerson family associated with the university, and the coach's son Ben, he plays on the basketball team for the university as well. So,
and I'm pretty sure, like, when Jared went over there, he actually stayed a couple of nights with the coach, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, the coach sorted him out and made sure he felt at home. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, so the coach would have picked him up at the airport, would have taken him shopping for a bit to get bits and pieces. Not that he didn't have any shortage of things that he took across with him.
I know, Sean, that you're one of the most prepared guys I've ever worked with.
And but yeah, I mean, when it came to their holidays like Thanksgiving, the coach, knowing that Jared didn't really have family over there, he invited him and some of the athletes to go with them down to Kentucky, and again just be part of their extended family and spend the time on on the farm. And so there's always that willingness to help and be there for the athletes.
What was the feedback regarding the sports facilities that Jared got access to? Was he pretty happy with those?
Yes, I think he was pretty happy with, because they could practice, during the warmer days. That they had access to about 4 or 5 different courses. Mm-hmm. Now those 4 or 5 different courses also made part of their weekly events. They'd play 4 practice rounds, and based on the lowest scores, those guys would generally travel for the events. I mean, there were some seniors on his team that were well established. One of them, Keegan Bronneberg, he had the year previous to Jared getting there, he actually won the NCAA Division II stroke play event.
Wow.
So well established.
Proven pathway.
Yeah, proven pathway. And in fact, 3 of their players post last year have now all turned pro, and I think 2 of them have already won out on tour.
So for anyone listening to this that thinks Division 1 is better than Division 2, you're having an absolute laugh. It's not true at all, is it? I get sick of people saying that. Yeah. And that's why we want to get guys like yourself on this podcast, man, because there's a lot of people that think they can't go pro if they go to a Division 2 college. That's just not true, right? Yeah. You've followed Division 2 college golf closely with interest, haven't you?
Yeah, no, I've followed it quite closely, and one of the events that Jared played in, it was actually the team that wasn't traveling that week. They went and played in another event, and it was a D1 event. And he went out there and he was lying, I think, 6th after day 1.
Wow.
And
that's the thing, right? Like, athletes have got choices. Go to a D1 school or go to a D2 school. And some people might say, you know what? I want to go to this Division 2 school in a nicer location in a city of 900,000 people like Indianapolis, versus going to a remote location to a Division 1 school where there's not much going on. I mean, Jared had every opportunity to go to like a Indiana Pacers NBA game and stuff like that, right? He could have gone to all of those events, but if you're in remote locations, you can't. So, and again, it comes down to trying to find the right fit. So, do you feel, Indy, looking back on it now, I mean, I know Jared's back home in New Zealand now. Do you see it that was the right fit for him?
I think that was probably the best fit at that stage, which we had access to. I mean, with travel being limited and that.
Yeah.
Did he play as much golf as he initially thought he would be playing? Probably not, given that, I mean, up in Indianapolis, it does get fairly cold. So there are some winter months where you aren't able to get out onto the course, and a lot of that practice is actually indoors, and they got fantastic indoor facilities.
Like golf sims and simulators and all that sort of stuff.
They've got simulators, they've got putting and chipping greens, and they'd have their regular little competitions. The gym facilities is out of this world.
He looks solid, man. Your boy. I couldn't believe how solid he looked. I was like, damn, he's putting like 10 kilos of just muscle.
Yeah, no, he came back with a fair few. I think probably about a dozen or 15 k's added weight.
He might be able to take you on in an arm wrestle, man. But no, he looked in good. He looked in good shape. Was he happy with like the wider support staff there for the sporting teams, like the physios and the trainers? And
I think he did get a lot of support from them.
Good.
The one thing I think as New Zealanders, we don't really always understand just how much support is out there for you. And maybe at times, you just got to put yourself out there and also ask, for that support when you need it. And I guess it's that, the Kiwi mentality of she'll be all right. And
and not talking about it. Yeah. You have to be good at communication. If you don't communicate in college, you struggle. That's a really good thing you brought up.
Yeah,
that's a great thing to talk about.
And honestly speaking, when you see the support systems that are in place that you have access to, and how the Americans utilize that to the best of their ability, it's always there. I think just shortly after Jared getting there, he wasn't probably eating as well as he should have been initially, feeding the body and that. So the coach got him straight onto the sports nutritionist, who worked out a plan for him, got him onto the sports psychologist, and they were working through, how to get through those let's call it flat patches in your round and stuff like that.
Wow.
And all there at your
disposal. Yeah. No, that's all good. Like, I think that a lot of athletes don't utilize those resources enough, and you need to. That's what going to the college system is about. Like, going to college in the States is you having an opportunity to be the best athlete you can be, and there's so many different things there that can help you become that, right?
Yeah. And I think it's for the athletes coming from New Zealand. I mean, yes, we can play on different courses over here. I mean, a lot of the conditions are probably pretty much similar. Winter, everybody tracks down towards Hamilton, Cambridge, Manawatu, those areas where it's sand-based courses.
Yeah.
Whereas up here, like in Auckland, it's mostly clay, so when it gets wet, they become really unplayable.
Yeah.
Whereas down there, or in America, you got to understand that from week to week, you're going and competing on different grasses, and how those different grasses react to what you normally, your ball striking maybe. And it's really that learning in that first year. I mean, you got to go over there with the mentality of, I'm going to be here to learn, and any event that I get into is just an added bonus, because I'm going back to school here, and that school is learning and understanding how my golf swing fits in and is basically can adapt to these different conditions.
So one question I got for you is, in terms of athletes going to college as freshmen, they're going there for the first time and they're not getting the game timing, they're getting quite upset that they don't get to play. What advice could you give those athletes?
I think really you got to take that first year as a learning experience, and you're really going there and understanding where you are in the process, getting to play on different courses, different conditions, different grasses, having a look at the seniors that are being selected. What are they doing? What are they doing differently during practices as compared to what you're doing? And that doesn't necessarily mean to go and change your swing or anything drastic like that. but even putting yourself up against them as often as you can, like in a competitive environment. So when you go out and you practice, have match play against them, play. So again, you are challenging yourself, making yourself feel uncomfortable against the best in your team lineup.
And there's also like a fine line, right? Because there's athletes that do well in in-house qualifying in their team for the weekend selection, and sometimes the coach just doesn't pick them and they're being unreasonable, and maybe they just prefer picking the older players, even though our athletes are getting the scores that they get. But then sometimes our athletes are just not performing under pressure and need a bit more effort. And I guess those are just two completely separate situations. So athletes should really take a look at it. And we spoke about this before, Sean. Communication has to be the most important thing to development, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, when Jared doesn't play well, was he good at communicating? Was that something that you had to help him out with?
I think in his case, a lot of times, like when I didn't get a phone call after a round or whatever, that would traditionally have signaled that sometimes things didn't go that well, or on occasions that things really went well. So he was really different in regards to that. But it's being able to be honest and open about your performance and not see it as critical. I mean, I've had the opportunity to caddy now a few times, for Dan Healy locally here in New Zealand, and the way that he looks at a round, if he's played well or he's played bad, he's quite honest and open about the output of that. If you speak to him after the round and it was just, I just wasn't good enough today, and I'll come back tomorrow and we'll have another go at this. And I think that the younger athletes tend to take things quite personal, and it's not personal.
Yeah, for sure. And what I do admire about Jared is that whether the round went good or went bad, whenever I spoke to Jared on the phone, he was very calm. He was very level-headed. Like, he didn't spiral out, he didn't throw his toys or anything like that. He was very calm. And I feel that's why he's had such a great golf career so far, and I hope he continues to keep playing. And I know that you said that you played around with him in Queenstown, didn't you, when he came back, and he was just hadn't picked up the clubs in how long was it?
Oh, probably two and a half months.
2.5 months, and he was just playing unreal.
Yeah, he looked disinterested for the first 2 holes, went 3 over, and then I think he went on like a 5 or 6 hole birdie streak, and he ended up shooting 4 or 5 under without even trying. And it's just in those moments that you look at it and you think, well, there is ability.
Yeah, and I think a lot of things that athletes need to understand is sometimes things just won't go your way, and it's how you bounce back from them. And Jared's done very well in that. So Jared's now back in New Zealand. He's in Christchurch studying there. Would you have done anything differently being at this point right now?
I think there would have been some things that we may have changed. I think having been in COVID, it made things extremely difficult from a traveling point of view. So even in the university selection, you didn't have the opportunity to go and to visit, to be part of, to see what that climate is like. The coach at Indianapolis, he was fantastic. I mean, I remember him giving me numbers and contact details of not only players on the team, but of parents.
Yeah, the support was incredible, right? From you, Indy. It was a real. I know that you still keep in touch with the coach and follow the team with interest, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Would you want to go over and see the guys over there, even though Jared's not there anymore?
Absolutely. Like I would love the opportunity to go over, to go to one of the events, see how they do, see how they play, just be part of the team atmosphere for the week. Yeah. And see how it gets done out there. It's quite different from how things are done back here in New Zealand. Yeah,
it'll be good because obviously, I know you grew up in a bit of sport. You were also a gun tennis player back in the day. I've been to your house. I've seen the trophies, man. And when you're in sport, you love playing against different people from different environments. And America's interesting, isn't it? It's like countries within countries. It's so different. Yeah,
the vastness over there is just something that we're not used to. That travel times, And just the difference in conditions from one state to the next state, be that, temperature wise, being at golf course wise, there's just a lot more. And I always remember one of Jared's coaches always used to say, to be successful at golf, you've got to be playing golf in shorts for 9 months of the year. And there's certainly some of those places in America that afford you that opportunity.
Yeah.
So
No, absolutely. And what advice could you give to athletes listening to this, or parents listening to this, and they might be 2 years away from going to college? I know there was actually an athlete that reached out to us that's just turned 13 and they want to start this process, which is pretty incredible. What advice could you give them looking back on your journey?
I think certainly our experience with Platform and yourself is trust the process. I mean, yes, there's going to be days that you're going to wonder, is my child going to get a scholarship? Is he not going to get a scholarship? Is this going to happen? Is this not going to happen? You're going to have those sleepless nights, but I can assure you that even through COVID, that did happen for us.
Yeah,
okay.
That was the most difficult time. I remember talking to you, man. I was like, I got this. Oh, we're going to get this done.
Yeah.
But it was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough.
And it's just believing and trusting that process. And even more so, as an athlete, when you get over to the States, understand there's going to be so many other talented athletes out there that are going to be so much better than you, but you have to learn to understand where you are in your process, because it is vastly different from the next athletes.
Yeah.
And again, just you were good enough to get there, you were good enough to get the opportunity to go and play there, so there must be something special about you, so use that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also it is very challenging to get a scholarship, but it was great that Jared was so academically inclined and worked so hard on his academics. That played a big part of it, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially through COVID, all of a sudden academics became the key factor, players not being able to participate in tournaments back home. I remember when we were talking to the coach from Indianapolis, I mean, standard practice for him, he would fly out to the different countries and actually go and watch the players that he was potentially going to sign, and that just wasn't happening.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it was a great fit, I reckon, for Jared academically, because he got rewarded academically quite nicely through an academic scholarship. He did very well for that, and it's not every day students also get academic scholarships. So big shout out for Jared, man. He worked his butt off, which is awesome. But also, like, Jared, he really knuckled down with the golf. And look, there's pressure on athletes to perform, especially when college is on the cards. These athletes know that whatever tournament that they're playing is going to be used for their college CV, and coaches are going to be looking at it. I mean, what advice could you give to athletes that are sitting there thinking, I've got to go put some scores together?
I think really if I look at how some of the other peers and colleagues of Jared play at that level, being American based, and that yes, they have access to a whole lot more competition, more regularly, but certainly the standout in some of those athletes that are performing really, really well is, even in practice, they're putting themselves into competitive scenarios all the time, whether that be you playing your number 1 player and you potentially number 9 or number 10, but going out and playing 4, 5, or maybe even 6 holes, but match play. Go out and really compete, not go out and compete and it's if I make double bogey on this hole, it doesn't really matter type of thing.
It's only practice, right?
Yeah, it's only practice. If I lose,
competing with intent of putting pressure on yourself.
Yeah, and it's getting yourself into that, getting familiar in feeling uncomfortable, because really, when you're under the pump, you are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's learning how to adapt and just how to embrace that uncomfortable, that uneasy feeling, and still be able to be as calm on the inside as possible.
No, I completely agree with you. Well, I mean, it's been great having you on, Sean, and what I love about this job is that you make amazing friends and you add a lot more members of the family. And I know that you're one of my family members, man, and I mean, I'm just waiting for you to invite me over for a barbecue at your house, because I know that you do a mean barbecue. I know these South Africans are notorious for it, so I can't wait to come over to your place. And also get on the golf course. I know I've been meaning to play golf with you for a while now, and I keep getting tied up, but we need to make that happen. But really appreciate everything, Sean. You're an absolute legend, and I know that you fly the platform flag pretty highly amongst a lot of athletes, so we appreciate you doing that. And I mean, it was just great seeing your boy Jared down in Christchurch recently, and just, you know, giving him a hug and having a coffee with him, and just hearing about his experience in the US. And you know, you guys will always be part of the platform family, and yeah, you never know. I know you've got a talented daughter right now. She's, how old is she?
Yeah, she's 7.5 at the moment.
7.5, man.
Yeah.
10 years time, let's go. D1 tennis, you reckon? Or
Yeah, she's looking that way.
Yeah. She's a
but
good tennis player.
Yeah, she enjoys tennis. She
Yeah.
needs some motivation, like all youngsters at times, but she enjoys it when she gets out there, and she's got that competitive edge to her.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess time will tell, and hopefully a person's better equipped, you know.
I'll send UCLA a message now and say keep their books open for 2038 or something. It'll be a while away. All good, brother. No, I appreciate you, man. Honestly, appreciate everything you've done, and yeah, look forward to staying in touch. And yeah, we'll be dropping this pod on all channels. If you want to re-listen to it, it'll be on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, and also we have got some more podcasts coming. So we'll see you next time.